Good morning. Welcome once again to the Young and Sane podcast. And this is a place where we explore thought provoking topics that challenge our perspectives, know ourselves better, to know our environment, to know each other, to know people, and to really understand the psychology behind why they are the way they are, they behave the way they do, and also we ourselves to help us navigate relationships and even communication to be better people, and then just to improve. So this is that podcast where we explore thought-provoking topics that challenge our perspective and provoke you to think and think really deeply. And yes, I am your host, Tamarflourish, and today we are going to delve into a controversial subject matter. Of course, from the title of this podcast, you already know. We are going to be talking about drugs, non-essentials, or escape. So let's navigate the complexities surrounding the role of drugs in our life. And yeah, let's delve right into the topic for today. So now let me give a perspective or context to what we're actually going to be talking about today. We're not going to be talking about drugs like in the medicinal use of it as prescribed by doctors, physicians, or whatever, due to assailing health issues or so. We're going to be talking about drugs as something as a substance that is used um that over time builds up into addiction, and then we just want to understand the psychology behind why drugs is also considered like something the young people of this generation are um have some kind of affinity with. A lot of people make use of substances. So there's a lot of substance abuse, substance use, and that is what we are going to be talking about today, not just the regular kind of drugs that are prescribed in the hospital, right? So I just wanted to lay that background. And so yeah, talking about drugs, whether they are non-essentials, a lot of people hold that non-essentials are things that we often think of them as just indulgences, things we can live without, right? So a lot of people using cannabis, using weed, using heroin, using all of those. Some of them use it as non-essentials, and of course, I've explained that they just use like they indulge to take such, probably when they're around their friends or so, and it's not something that they think they are addicted to. It's something that they can live without, right? But then are these drugs, are they merely non-essentials? Are they merely non-essentials, like something that people can live without? Are they really not addicted to these drugs, right? Over time, does addiction not build up? These are some of the concerns, yeah. Or is there, like, does the impact of the use of these drugs go beyond casual enjoyment? So that is where escape comes. Is it really used as a non-essential, or people use it as an escape mechanism from the realities they face, the realities and the complexities of life when they face soul wrenching circumstances and situations? So yeah, that is what we like. These are the concepts that we want to base our discourse of drugs and substance abuse or use around. So yeah, concerning the escape mechanism, a lot of people use drugs to escape from reality, and that's just the truth. There are different reasons why people use drugs, but one prevalent aspect of using drugs is as an escape from reality. So we want to like explore the psychology behind this escape mechanism and understand why individuals might want to seek refuge in these substances. Like what actually drives this desire for an alternate reality, right? Why do they want to escape from um, what they are experiencing or what they are feeling? Why do they crave such escape, right? And that is what we want to consider in this podcast. I'll say that over again. So yeah, let's move on to answer the question why people indulge in um taking drugs as an escape. But before then, let's go back to the use of drugs as non-essentials. So the concept of non-essentials in this life is, as I've mentioned before, typically refers to the use of things that are not necessary for survival or basic well-being. So you're just taking it because you want to fulfill your indulgence, just like casual indulgence, and people consider it to be luxuries or just indulgences that enhance the quality of life, but they are not fundamental for their existence. So people hold that they take drugs as non-essentials just because they want to fulfill their indulgences or just afford the luxury of taking substances or drugs, not because they want to enhance their quality of life. Like just to enhance their quality of life, right? Maybe just to feel a certain type of way or to do a certain type of thing. Like some people take drugs before having sex just to enhance that quality of experience, but then it's not because they're taking the drugs for like existence, fundamentally live or something like that. So when we examine where drugs fit in this concept, you know, it's crucial to recognize that perspectives on their essentiality vary widely. It's usually different. And then on one hand, some argue that drugs, whether used recreationally or for specific purposes, fall into the category of non-essentials. Some people consider it that they may be seen as optional, providing a form of entertainment or escape from routine, but not integral to a person's well-being. All that I've said, right? People just take it as luxury, relaxation, entertainment, or not like it's something they base their life on. And then on the other hand, the impact of drugs can extend beyond casual enjoyment. For some people, even though they consider it as non-essential, right? And then for some individuals, drugs may serve as coping mechanisms, offering a temporary escape from stress, emotional pain, or the challenges of daily life. And in this context, drugs may take on a more significant role, becoming a means of self-medication or a way to navigate personal struggle. So this is where the issue of escape from reality comes. Yeah, it's offering you a temporary escape from whatever you feel, stress, emotional pain, challenges of daily life, and this is where a lot of people now consider drugs to be addictive. So there are like two schools of thought, right? Probably people that use drugs that say, oh, we just use it as non-essentials, just to fulfill our crave for indulgence, relax, entertainment, luxury. And then on the other end, there are people that use drugs as an escape from reality. So it is essential to recognize the diverse reasons people engage in drugs, uh, and to consider the potential consequences, both positive and negative, that can arise from their use. Um, and then understanding the broader context of how drugs fit in the spectrum of non-essentials. So, um, for us to really get into the topic of non-essentials. So for us to get into the topic of non-essentials, we have to really explore the psychological, social, and cultural dimensions that influence individual perspectives and behaviors on taking drugs as non-essentials. The spectrum of that can be so broad, and we have to like explore that. What's the psychological dimension that influence individual perspective? What's the social dimension that influence individual perspective? What's the cultural dimension that influence individual perspective and behavior, and why they take drugs? Yeah. So as we've mentioned, people take drugs. People say they take drugs as non-essentials. Others hold that they take drugs as an escape from reality. So let's really look into the situation of things, right? People turn to drugs. People turn to drugs for different reasons, and a prevalent aspect of it is using them as an escape from reality. Now, I want to understand what is the psychology behind this escape mechanism, and why do individuals um, seek refuge in substances? Why do they? Why are they prone to do that? So there's a lot of psychological narrative to this, right? Yeah. So the psychology behind using drugs as an escape from reality is quite complex and multifaceted. So it's often rooted in individual experiences, the emotions they feel and want to numb or avoid, and coping mechanisms, right? Coping in the midst of stress and all of that. Now, several psychological factors contribute to why individuals um, might seek refuge in substances, in drugs, and we're going to mention quite a few of them, right? Number one is people want to cope with stress and trauma. So individuals that are facing high levels of stress or traumatic experiences may turn to drugs as a way to numb their emotional pain, as I've said. The altered state of consciousness induced by certain substances may now provide a temporary respite from overwhelming emotions. So some drugs that we take goes to heighten the production of probably the joy hormone, the pleasure hormone, the all those hormones that put you in a positive spot where you feel good, you feel okay. So you're experiencing an alternate reality that is quite delulu. Yeah, so that is not what that's not the current realistic place that you are, but you now decide to take drugs to have or find an alternate reality. And number two reason could be seeking pleasure and reward. And so a lot of people use drugs to trigger the release of neurotransmitters. So as I mentioned, right, such as dopamine, which are associated with pleasure and reward, and the immediate gratification experienced through substance use can create a powerful psychological reinforcement that leads the individual to seek that euphoric escape repeatedly. So this one makes people to become overly addictive because there is a high that you feel, and every time you want to feel it, so you always seek that pleasure, and then the reward that the pleasure gives. So you always want to be at that spot, not leaving that place, right? And could lead them to seek that escape repeatedly. Number three reason why people may use drugs, substance abuse, and use it as use drugs is because they want to cope with mental health issues. So they are trying to escape from their reality of having mental health issues. Some individuals use drugs as a form of self-medication to alleviate symptoms of mental health disorders such as anxiety or depression. So a lot of people that have anxiety or depression, they're giving antidepressants and all those kind of things. And yes, sometimes it becomes very addictive, right? So the temporary relief provided by substances may now offer a sense of normalcy or calmness for those struggling with mental health challenges. This could be another reason why people take drugs. The fourth reason is social and environmental influences. A lot of people are under peer pressure. Societal norms and environmental factors play a significant role in this part. So individuals may turn to drugs as a way to fit in, escape social pressures, or conform to perceived expectations. So I want to belong, I want to feel significant, relevant in this group. I want to be loved, I want to feel belonging, right? Sense of belonging. Yeah, can make people to indulge in substance use and abuse. Number five reason is now the real escape from reality. Like people use drugs to escape from reality by indulging in by seeking pleasure and reward, as we've mentioned, like a lot of things. But then, like there's some people that it's not even the pleasure or the reward now that they are looking for. They just want to escape their reality. So this desire to escape from the challenges of everyday life, whether related to work or relationships or personal responsibilities, can drive individuals to seek an altered state of consciousness through drug use. And then this escape may be an attempt to temporarily distance themselves from difficulties, and there's a lot of things happening, like a lot of responsibilities, stress, emotional turmoil from relationships that are quite hard work, like, and it really takes a lot to keep a relationship moving, right? It really takes a lot to have a thriving relationship, and so it can be so stressful that people just want to escape their reality. Yes, and even after heartbreaks and all of those. So yeah, so understanding the psychology behind escape mechanisms, we really need to involve acknowledging the interplay of all these factors that I've mentioned, and then recognizing that substance use is often a complex response, a combination of internal and external stressors. Yeah, so effective interventions and support systems are expected to address the underlying psychological needs and challenges individuals face that makes them to go for these coping strategies or alternatives or escape from reality. And then in discovering the underlying psychological needs and challenges that individuals face that drive them to this thing, they should be able to offer healthier coping strategies and alternatives to substance abuse. But this is quite difficult, right? Because we live in a society where people do not want to subject themselves to looking for, like, they don't want to subject themselves to people that will really help them. And it's because there's a whole lot of beliefs to. And then I think the other day I asked a question on Facebook, and a lot of people were saying the cost of therapy and even subscribing to someone that will help you is either too high, or even aside the cost, it's pretty difficult. There's a whole lot of trust issues reigning on the surface of the earth that is pretty difficult to go meet a stranger to help you with the emotional stress, like all the things that you want to escape from. It's pretty difficult, and I quite well understand. So finding effective interventions and support systems that will even have the opportunity to discover the underlying psychological needs and challenges individuals face will be quite an uphill task. That's what I think. But then it's the reason why we have this kind of show, right? To speak to people that listen, your substance use, we don't need to condemn you for using those substances, drugs or whatever. No condemnation. Let's just find out what is actually happening with you. What are the underlying difficulties you're facing? What are your psychological needs and what are your psychological challenges? And let's take it up from there. Escaping reality with drugs, you still come back to the reality, and so it's like a circle that you need to keep repeating to be on that level forever, right? So it's like you take a dose today to be on that level of high. Tomorrow that amount of dosage may not necessarily give you the level of high that you got to the previous day, and so you need to up it, top it, and in so doing, people become addicted to the feeling that they get, and also the substance. And nobody talks about the damages all these things do to our system. So sometimes we even need to consider doing like a lot of research on this to actually know the damages that it can do to our bodies, right? But on this podcast, I'm not here to talk about the damages. I'm not here to talk about the effects. So I just want to talk about a lot of things, but majorly focusing on the psychological needs and challenges that makes individuals to get into the use of substance abuse, drug abuse, and all these kind of things. And doing some research through the history of the use of drugs, it came up as the use of drugs started as some ancient rituals and religious practices in some places. Some scholars believe that soma, I think a mysterious plant, was a hallucinogenic substance used in Vedic rituals for religious and spiritual experiences. So there are a lot of people that use substance for religious and spiritual experiences. Recently, I think is it the ayahuasca? Is that what it's called? I think, yeah, that's the name, and it's currently widespread among um, influential Hollywood people recently, right? And they go to this ayahuasca, is it cave or something like that, where the spiritual person gives them a dose. So their, is it medicine woman? I think that's what they call her. Gives them an amount of dosage that they take, and then they get elevated into a kind of state of consciousness that helps them cleanse. I think that's what they say, healing from trauma, attain greater level of consciousness in the universe, and all those kind of stuff. I think that's what a lot of people use drugs for now. Psychedelics, yeah. Then there are psychedelics also. I think they practice their spirituality by taking all those kind of drugs. And I think veterans in the post World War II trauma use um, heroin because we are struggling with trauma, PTSD, and a lot of that. And the drug was initially prescribed for pain relief, but it now became addictive due to its nature. I think because it helped them escape from trauma or so, and then became widespread due to the abuse of it. And yeah, so Vietnam War too, a lot of soldiers used substances like marijuana and heroin to cope. They use it as a coping mechanism in response to the stress and the trauma of the war they experienced. And then mentioning the psychedelics and hippie movement, I think in the 1960s, that was where it came out, and they used LSD, and then they used those substances as a form of rebellion against societal norms and to seek alternative states of consciousness. So all these people are kind of seeking relief from pain, or not wanting to face the trauma, escape the trauma they're facing, cope with stress, or attain higher states of consciousness. So these were the reasons why people started using a lot of drugs and substances. I think from the 1960s and after the Second World War and all those kinds of things. And I think now it has gained popularity, especially among young people and among famous people that are going through a lot of things. People that are going through a lot of things. So we are briefly going to talk about the effects of these drugs on mental well-being, and the intersection between the use of drugs and mental well-being is complex, and a lot of people have researched on it, and people have shed light on both the therapeutic and detrimental effects. Now we're going to explore some of the therapeutic effects and also the detrimental effects. Now, what are the therapeutic events? Therapeutic events is like these drugs, a few of them, some of them are used for therapy. For example, is psychiatric medication. So prescription of these medications, including antidepressants, anxiolytics, antipsychotics, and a lot of all those, are commonly used to treat various mental health conditions, and These drugs aim to restore chemical imbalances in the brain and alleviate symptoms, and the continuous use of it by those um, people, patients, psychiatric patients, may lead to addiction of stuff, right? Um, and then there's also another therapeutic effect, which is psychedelic assisted therapy. And then recently, a lot of people have seen that it has shown promising results regarding the therapeutic potential of psychedelics. There's a lot of them, and such as I think psilocybin and MDMA in treating conditions like depression, PTSD, and anxiety. So the kind of state of consciousness it awakes in people has shown promising results, and then it brought down their depression, it brought down their PTSD, it brought down their anxiety, and all those kind of things. And a lot of these drugs have been used in controlled settings and professional guidance, and are crucial components of therapy. So a lot of people, I think, ayahuasca, people use it as therapy, spiritual cleansing, spiritual healing, and all this kind of things, because the psychedelic drugs they take help to reduce depression, anxiety, and PTSD. It gives them this awakened state of consciousness that eliminates all those feelings. So people get addicted to the use of psychedelic drugs because of the therapy it offers. And then what are the detrimental effects? People become addicted to it, including alcohol, illicit drugs, and so, and then this addiction can even become a mental health disorder. It can even exacerbate existing mental health conditions and trigger the onset of new ones. Another detrimental effect is psychosis and hallucinations, and certain drugs, especially hallucinogens and stimulants, may induce psychotic symptoms, hallucinations, or exacerbate existing psychotic disorders. These are some bad effects. Then there's also depression and anxiety. The chronic use of substances like alcohol, cannabis, or opioids may even contribute or worsen symptoms of depression and anxiety. And then substance-induced mental health issues can also persist even after discontinuing the drug use. So it's a lot of things. Some effect on individual variability also. There's genetic and environmental factors. So the impact of drug abuse on the mental health of people may vary among different individuals, and this is influenced by their genetic predispositions and the environmental factors they grew up in or they are currently adapted to. And then some individuals may be more vulnerable to the negative effects of certain substances. So these are some of the effects. And then it could also be dual diagnosis, so co-occurring disorders where substance use disorders and mental health disorders can occur simultaneously, and it's common, and it's essential to address both aspects concurrently for like effective treatment. And so a lot of substance use can cause this. Imagine you using a substance that at the same time causes health disorders, and then causes mental health disorder, and then causes another kind of disorder that you have to like. So these are some of the issues. These are the issues, right? These are the issues, and people have to like be careful. Even those using drugs for therapeutic applications, the misuse or abuse of those substances can significantly impact their mental well-being. right? So these are just a lot of things, and yeah, I got some people's story on the use of drugs, and I'm just going to read those out to us. Some people's personal stories on their use of drugs. I think this guy's name is Mark, and he was on a journey with cannabis. And for him, it was just for the purpose of recreation. He was using this drug for the recreational use. So, like in the class of non-essentials, right? So, Mark was a young professional, and he initially experimented with cannabis as a recreational drug and used it during social gatherings. What started as occasional use, you see the thin line? So, what started as occasional use turned into a regular habit, as because he found it helpful to help him relax after work. And then after some time passed, Mark now noticed that his dependence on this cannabis began to affect his productivity and motivation. So, seeking balance, he now decided to opt for healthier um, things to use for his coping mechanism and all that. So another person, Sarah, used she struggled with opioids, and for her whole story was about using it as an escape mechanism. So Sarah is a middle-aged woman, and she was faced with chronic pain due to a medical condition that she had. And initially, the doctors prescribed opioids for pain management. So imagine that the doctors prescribed opioids for Sarah, so that she can manage her pain. She had a pain because of a medical condition that she was going through, and then she soon found herself relying on these opioids for not just physical relief, but also as a means of emotional escape from life challenges. So obviously, she became addicted to Sarah, and her story reflects the complex interplay between physical pain, mental well-being, and the potential risks associated with relying on substances for escape. And this was her journey to seek alternative pain management strategies, and she eventually received support for a mental health, right? Because all these things will still invariably affect your mental health. You relying on these substances for escape, for pain management, for like more than it was prescribed, right? Also lead to subsequent mental health challenges that needs to be dealt with. So these are just some of the stories. I still have a bit more. Now for another person, I think Alex is his name. He was trying to cope with trauma. So Alex was a veteran who was dealing with PTSD, and he struggled with intense emotional distress. Hi, those guys suffered. The guys that were involved in veteran war. So he was a veteran, and he was dealing with PTSD, and then he was struggling with intense emotional distress, and then resulted in traditional therapy that had limited success until he participated in an MDMA assisted therapy program. Now, under controlled conditions, Alex used the MDMA as a therapeutic tool, facilitating his breakthrough in processing his trauma and all those kind of things. But if he had not been under controlled conditions, I think it would have led to a misuse or abuse of MDMA for escape from his trauma, right? And another person's story, Emma. Emma was faced with social pressure, which made her to resort to the use of cocaine to meet up with, I think she wanted to have a sense of belonging with her peers or so. So Emma was a college student and she was faced with academic pressures and societal expectations, and she was seeking for a way to stay awake during late night studies. So she wanted to just do well in school, right? And she wanted to stay awake during late night study sessions. So she turned to cocaine for the stimulant effect, and then what became as a tool to cope with academic stress now transformed into a habit, and that was the beginning of her addiction. So this is like how she was impacted. She became a victim of substance abuse because of the impact of social pressures on her. Yeah, so just these are just few of the stories that talking about lead to the use or the abuse of substances, either as non-essential or as an escape mechanism or as a coping strategy or as whatsoever. So in light of all these things we've discussed, right, there's solution, there's remedy. And the funny thing is a few experts thought it that the use of drug or the use of drug substances or even drug abuse extends beyond the rule of a non-essential or escape mechanism. That there's just a lot of underlying factors why people do that, and so based on that, a lot of things have been recommended. And in today's episode of this podcast, we're going to be recommending people to subscribe to rehabilitation. It's a bit difficult if people don't have the desire to get better and become normal. Like, you are a normal, sane human being. A lot of people are so used to being abnormal and insane that they don't think they can ever become sane or normal anymore. So it's the reason why a lot of people don't even want to think about getting treatment or rehabilitation from these unfortunate incidents and whatever. So people, there are various ways to get better, right? But people need to desire to become better. People need to want to be cured. People need to want to be healed. People need to want it. So it needs to be a desire. So yeah, I do hope that people want to desire to get better. People want to desire to become normal and sane and okay, rather than being used to being abnormal and insane and all this kind of things. So that's what I desire for people. And that brings us to the end of today's podcast episode. For me, it was insightful. I hope you actually enjoyed today's episode. And as we've explored the multifaceted topic of drugs, examining whether they are non-essentials or a means of escape, I am pumped. And I'm really expecting that you guys will join me for the next episodes that will come up. So as I conclude, I encourage each and every one of you to reflect on your own perspectives and continue the conversation, right? Now, drugs, they're not the only things that people subscribe to escape from reality or use as a coping mechanism or even used as a non-essential for recreational purposes and all of this. There are other habits that people subscribe to which may not be healthy. But yeah, so I want you to continue the conversation. Thank you for joining us on the Young and Sane podcast. Until next time, stay curious. And if you've enjoyed today's episode, please subscribe if you're listening on Google Podcast. If you're listening on Spotify, please follow and leave a review. I would want to read your review and your comments. Share it with your friends. Share this podcast episode with your friends. And I would love to get your feedback. It will be very, very much appreciated. We'll be back soon with more thought-provoking discussions next week, and yeah, so keep doing that till 2024. Thank you so much for tuning in to this podcast. Thank you so much for listening on the Young and Sane podcast. Thank you. Have a nice week. Bye-bye.